Welcome back to the Forensics Detailing channel, guys. I'm doing a video for one of my patrons, James, Aussie UK, tier 4 patron that can request a video. And there's some questions here that I'm going to answer. Question: what should you be using to apply specific products? E.g., I bought some Paragon microfiber sponges that I thought would be good for pearl application on the interior. Pearl is an interior dressing. I'll talk about it in a second. I don't get the same results you do in your vid. I was also going to use the same thing for buffing off polish. Not so sure now. Kent microfiber cloth for applying FSE. Is that correct? Almost need to be a do's and don't guide. Understood. Let's get FSE as well. Right. Now, first of all, in these two boxes, I have pretty much every form of applicator I use. Now, first of all, guys, James, and anyone watching, paste waxes. If you're applying a paste wax, you've got two types of applicator generally, haven't you? You've got sponge applicators, which I've got this drawer full of them, and you've got microfiber applicators. I've got some sponge ones in here. What's going on? Come on, John, get your organisation thing. So sponge applicators, microfiber applicators. Paste wax, guys, in my opinion, you should be using a sponge applicator. Preferably one that fits into the tin that you're using. Preferably one that you can hold, you know, whatever your preference is. So you don't have to get your hands all greasy on the paste wax and covered in solvent. Why should you use sponge for paste wax and not microfiber? Microfiber tends to kind of want to absorb that type of product, a thicker paste solvent carried product. You'll get a lot of it collecting in the microfiber. It just won't work as well, is the answer. If you use a sponge to apply a wax, it can take, if it's the right stiffness, it can spread and work the wax properly. If the sponge is too soft, sometimes it can fold over on you and stuff like that. So if you look at this, this is like the Adams applicator. It actually has a very stiff top part, so you've got some rigidity, and then a very soft bottom part. They are as premium as it gets. So you get the nice soft foam on the panel, but you get a harder foam, but you'll pay the money for these. Or you can just go with a cheaper applicator and just sort of grin and bear it a little bit. They might roll over a little bit more on you. So that's paste waxes. What other types of products have you got? Well, Koch FSE. Now, should you use any applicator with Koch FSE? That's a good question. You can do. If you do, I would use a microfiber applicator. Now, the trick is, with any water-based product, you can use a microfiber applicator. Just pick a standard one. This is the Paragon one here. What you can do is, if you use this dry, it's going to buff and absorb the product off the panel. Sometimes you want to actually spread that product on the panel. So one trick you've always got in your arsenal is to soak a microfiber in water and then wring it out, so that you're not going to absorb as much product because there's water in there. So I could then spray the FSE onto this panel, you know, give it a good mist across, and then just work that product over and form the film over the panel. Leave it for a second and take a nice clean microfiber cloth and just buff that back. That's a good way of doing it. The downside of that is you are diluting it down a little bit when you spray into a water, one of these that's saturated with water. So this is getting really complicated. But with something like FSE, which is a descaler, you could soak this out in water, wring it all out, and then just squirt loads of SFE into the surface of this, so it's kind of primed with product as well. And then spray it over, spread it, leave it to bite away at the line, the scale, the minerals or whatever, and then buff it back. So that's what you could do. Alternatively, you could just spray this over the panel and then work it over with a microfiber. The only problem with that is you don't get that coverage then. So it's up to you to a little bit of experimentation, but don't use a sponge applicator with a water-based product. It just won't spread it as well. CarPro Pearl. Now this one of course is one that I use. I have it mixed up. That's mixed 1-to-1 for tyres and 3-to-1 there for pretty much all other things. What I do, guys, is I use a cheap applicator. It's just because they get trashed. CarPro Pearl, if you're using it on the interior, it's water-based. If you use a sponge, the sponge will stick to certain things. It just won't be as good. You want to use a microfiber applicator to spread car pro pearl. Again, the trick is you can soak out the microfiber applicator, wring all the water out. Do not spray car pro pearl around in the cockpit because it's quite sticky. It will go everywhere. It will go in your eyes and stuff. It will go on, fall on the dashboard and stuff. Spray it into the applicator. Get loads of it in that applicator and then just work it over. And you'll see the wetting effect of it. But as the water flashes away, it's going to leave the car pro pearl product there. And I typically use it at 3:1 with a wet applicator because that will knock the concentration down a little bit more to 5:1, and it works great. If you go spraying this around, it will run everywhere and make a mess. So spray that into the applicator. Okay. Next thing is abrasive products like super resin polish. Oh god, we're going to get into the drama of the is it abrasive or not? Yes, it is. Or an abrasive like 3-in-1 wax, which has got some abrasives in it. Now this is a thicker product. I would actually recommend with a solvent carried polish like this. If you want to work it, you should use a sponge. Just like if you're working abrasives on a machine, most of the time your pads are foam. As soon as I said that, I was going, well, you got wool and microfiber as well, haven't you? With abrasive, solvent carried abrasives like this and liquid waxes and stuff like that, I would suggest that you use a sponge. So it will just allow you to work them a bit more. Again, you want a stiffer kind of product. Now, here's another thing with Tyre dressings. Typically, if that's something like Maguire's, they're a solvent-based thing. I like using very cheap eBay sponges that you can get from ZFE stores, you know, clones or whatever they are, these things. Sponges can delaminate as you rub them over tyres, and they can fall to bits, so you don't get that many uses out of them. You can, and sometimes, again with car pro pearl, I sometimes use these on tyres. You will trash them though. And I'll use 1:1. I might even cover the tyre and then just work it around. You can use a little brush to work it around, or you can load up that pad and work it around. A little bit, this is going to come down to personal preference, guys. And finally, just normal standard detail sprays. I tend to not want to use an applicator when I'm using a detail spray because I want to get around the car. The exception is that I do sometimes take these massive, very soft, very high quality kind of microfiber pads with something like Car Pro Elixir, which is a fantastic detail spray, SiO2 spray, waterless wash, very hydrophobic, does a lot. Really massive fan of that product. Sometimes I'll wring this microfiber out with water again, and I'll mist a couple of squirts of Elixir on here, or maybe mist a couple of squirts on the panel, and I'll just, because it's a nice big soft pad, I'll just go over there and form a film, and then I'll use that for the whole car to apply it. And then just as that film starts to sort of vaporize and disappear, I'll just hit it with a nice clean microfiber cloth, and it should all be nice and smooth, and I shouldn't get any streaking. If you overload something like Elixir on it and you have no applicator to spread it and form the film, and you just start buffing it around, you can get streaking and stuff like that. So using that trick of soaking a microfiber applicator with water to help you spread a water-based product is something that I find really, really useful. When you're buffing some other things on microfiber towels, okay guys, this is really useful information. Some of you would disagree. These open pile cloths, like your Eagle Edgeless, you know, the nice soft fluffy cloths, and this into detailing Korean one, I would not recommend that you use those on water-based products like Elixir or detail sprays. When they're wet, they'll stick to the panel and you'll pull fibres out of them. You'll just work every single fibre and it creates kind of friction. Not always, but a lot of times that's what I notice. So you would use something like this Red Company 365, or I've got the 300s in the back there, lovely, or my little grey ones, which I've got thousands of. So that's not an open pile cloth. It's quite a thick towel. if you just not use the normal terry cloth, sometimes a terry cloth can ball up on you and stuff like that. So a thicker, this is a dual pile towel, a thicker dual pile towel will hold that square shape, and you'll just be able to kind of glide it over the panel a little bit more and remove excess. So I'm looking for a cloth that doesn't ball up for that sort of thing. There's lots of experimentation to be done on picking the right cloth for the right job, and some people have 15 different microfiber towels and some people just want one. So there's no right or wrong there. I'm down to about sort of 4 or 5 different cloths because I want to minimise it as well. There's not too much. These Rag Company, these 3 there's not too much that those cloths do not do well. Fantastic they are, and I've got like a denser version down there. So that's really it, guys, on applicators and what they are for. Hope that helps. Key thing to understand whenever you're working on a product: how thick is it? Is it water-based or is it solvent-based? And after a while, you just get a feeling of what's right. But I hope this video is of some use. Let me know as well, guys, if I've missed anything, and chip in as well, because the comments are always really, really good. Don't use the Kent cloth to apply FSE. I've got a video on that Kent cloth. It's a drying towel, essentially. You want to do what I said. You know, work panel by panel, one at a time. Spray the FSE, spread it to form a film, leave that wet film there to eat away and do its descaling, and then buff it back with a clean microfiber gently, you know, gently. Always buff gently in case there's a little bit of grit or dirt gets in there and it'll be scratching up the clear coat. So, Aussie, I hope that was useful. You've got a third question here. Bit of a beginner's thing, but I struggle to get my confused brain around pre-washing, washing, decon, and the timings. E.g., so I lay the autofoam pre-wash all over, then I clean the wheels, but that's also deconning them as well. No, it's not. We'll explain that in a second. Then I go back to rinse the body to be able to move on to the decon of that. Order is already mixed up because I've basically done the wheels, but I only pre-washed the car. So I think you've got a bit confused there, my friend. Decon. So whenever you're thinking about detailing, it's always good to break it down into wash, decon, polishing, you know, abrasives, and then protection. Washing is simply, you know, water's involved in most of the time. And the more I talk, the more little contradictions can click up in my head. Washing is just what you think it is, okay? So when you're putting a pre-wash on there, you're actually washing the dirt off of the car. Decontamination is all of the dirt that stays on the car and is not removed by washing. So iron fallout that's embedded into the clear coat, tar that's like a resin that's stuck to the clear coat, you can't wash that off of the car, overspray paint that's stuck on there, what else? Glue, adhesives that get stuck on there. Washing is not going to remove those, okay? So let's just go back to washing and your order of doing stuff first of all. In the winter, what you can do is you can lay the snow foam over all of your car, you can cover it in the arches, all that sort of stuff. What you should always do, or what you can do then, is go and blast the snow foam, the pre-wash, off of the alloy wheels and start cleaning them, scrubbing them out, and leave the snow foam on the car to just sit there and dwell, and it's not going to dry out on you and you've got no problems. If you do the same thing in the summer, you can literally have days where you've only got, if you leave that product on the car for more than 3 or 4 minutes, it's going to start drying and it's going to make a mess of your car. Once those chemicals dry on the car, you can't always, if they can really bed down, you can't always just easily rinse them off. So in the summer, what I'd suggest you do is don't put your pre-wash all over the car, put it in the wheel arch, in the wheels, and then if it's auto foam, it'll act quickly and you can put it in all 4 wheels, come back to the first wheel, blast it all out, let the pressure washer just take all the light dirt off the top, repeat on that wheel, repeat on that wheel over there, repeat on that wheel over there, then go back to this wheel, it's been pre-washed now, go in, do your contact clean on that wheel, contact clean on that wheel, contact clean on that wheel, contact clean on that wheel. After you've done that, then put your pre-wash over the car in the summer, let it dwell for, you know, as long as you can. You're watching it now, you're keeping an eye on it. You can do some brush work if you want, if the car's not too dirty. Some argue that you shouldn't really be brushing, poking your brush around if there's loads of grime and dirt on a car that's had corrected paint. Fair enough, don't do it. Don't do the brush work if it's got corrected paint. If it's your normal everyday car, then go get stuck in. I get stuck in on this. So then you lay your product on, blast off in the summer, and then you're ready to go and do your contact clean. And then you do your bucket clean and your wash methods, all that. After you've washed the car, okay, if the car is covered in contamination, all the stuck on stuff, the paint is going to feel rough. The alloy wheels might have all tar and glue in them, bits and stuff like that. So what is the point of then going to shove a wax on top of all of that protection, you know, on top of that car, if it's full of rough contamination? And cars that are covered in contamination, as well as feeling rough, are going to look rough. It's going to affect the gloss. So you always have to decide with a car, does it need decontaminating or does it not need decontaminating? If it needs decontaminating, then you get your clay bar out, you do your chemical decontamination. We've done the videos on how to decontaminate. You remove all those contaminants, and the bad news is when you remove contaminants from the cars, you scratch the clear coat. If you have a heavy workshop lighting, you will see it. Some guys tell me that they can decon cars with clays without putting in any scratches. Not true. I don't even want to argue that. I just don't even want to argue it. When you're claying and the car's wet, if you're doing it outside, you can't see what you're doing. When you've dried the car after claying it and you get it in, you get the heavy workshop lighting on it, it'll be covered in swirls, scratch marks. Because when you pull the contaminants off the car, you're moving it over the paint, and you can't not do that. And it scratches, unfortunately, that's the reality. So cars need a little buff after you've clayed them, in my opinion. You can use a little hand glaze if you want. That's a whole different debate. So I hope that clears up your third point around washing and deconning. They are two separate activities, and washing generally cannot remove contamination. That's why you have all these, that's why you have the two different processes. There are some aggressive washes which can do limited amounts of decontamination, like Meguiar's Wash Plus, the abrasive one, like Garage Therapy Decon Wash, but they can't do full decons, and you perhaps want to use those as a precursor to deconning to make the claying process slightly easier. So that's it. Thank you very much for watching. I've got to get outside because the wind's starting to pick up now. Over and out.
Holding on to what I knew, but the moment's gone. Where was I when